Hi, everyone. Welcome to our second webinar for the Washington Passport Network, part of our 2020-2021 webinar series. Today's webinar is focused on passport student support funds and then the effective uses of these funds. These funds were formerly called the incentive grant funds that you might be familiar with. And today we have three presenters. And before we get started with the presenters, again, my name's Donna Quach. I'm with the College Success Foundation and the Washington Passport Network, and really excited that you're all here with us this afternoon. So the presenters that we have today for this webinar is Cypriano-McAferty. She's the Assistant Director of the Passport to Careers program with the Washington Student Achievement Council. So WASAC is the administrator of Passport to Careers, so that includes both the college side and the apprenticeship opportunities. The second presenter we have with us this afternoon is Brian Davidson. He is the Passport Advisor, also known as the Designated Support Staff at Whatcom Community College. And then we also have Maria Reyna, who is the Director of the New Student Family Program at Eastern Washington University, and also the Designated Support Staff there. And both of them have been, all three of them actually have been in this role for a long time, and so they're seasoned in this work and have a lot of knowledge and information to share with us this afternoon. So just to kind of frame our hour together, we have a couple of goals that we'd like to share with this group and that we're hoping that you all leave this webinar with. One is more knowledge and understanding of the parameters for the Passport Student Support Funds, which is formerly incentive grants. And then the second one is having time to discuss approaches to accessing and using these funds. We get a lot of questions about what can these funds be paid for, or expenses that can be paid for, and then how to actually use the funds and access them on your institution and campus. And then we do want to share that this webinar is the intended and target audience is for designated support staff and financial aid administrators, but we do think there's going to be a lot of information here that will be beneficial for all participants. And with that, I'll hand it over to Dawn.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Before we get started, we did want to start off by telling you a little bit about the different roles that each partner has on the college campuses. So when an institution submits their signed agreement to participate in the Passport program, they're asked to identify 3 key people on campus that will work with the program. First of all is the designated support staff, or we refer to them as the DSS as well. So the DSS is the frontline support for the students. They're kind of the air traffic controller. They know what resources are available on campus or in the community, and they can refer the student to those different resources. They're trained in the Passport program by both WASAC and the College Success Foundation, and they're knowledgeable about how the program works. And they also have, pretty much immediate access to both WASAC staff and the College Success Foundation. The second identified group of people of supporters are the financial aid administrators. And so this person on the college campus they're an expert in financial aid, and they're knowledgeable about passport eligibility, and they often work in very close partnership with the designated support staff. And they also are responsible for requesting the scholarship payments from WASAC. And I did want to differentiate, there's a difference between the scholarship payment and the student support fund payment to institutions. And then thirdly, there is the Passport Campus Leader. And this person's role is to advocate for the program and the students served by the program on their respective campuses. They support the designated support staff and the financial aid administrator on their campus as well. And then I did want to point out here this Passport contact list. Everybody who participates in the Passport program, they submit the 3 names. We have email addresses and phone numbers, and their positions as well. And we maintain a contact list on the Ready Set Grad website. It's posted there for both students and for fellow administrators in the Washington Passport Network. And I wanted to put in a little plug here that if there is a transition on your campus please contact WASAC so that we can make updates to this. We do try to keep it as updated as possible, but I know that there's been quite a bit of transition, especially recently, and sometimes an institution might forget to notify us. So if you do have a change on your campus, let us know so that we can go ahead and update that list for students and other administrators. And then next slide. So this here is basically, it's the budget language that was provided to WASAC from the legislature. And you see that the budget language here is pretty broad. It provides us with specific guidance about what support may be provided and allows flexibility to broaden the support to what the student actually requires. So you can see here that I've bolded, so you can see funds are provided for student scholarships, which is one thing, and for incentive payments through the colleges that they attend for individualized student support services, which may include, but are not limited to, and that's a key piece of this, college and career advising, counseling, tutoring, costs incurred for students while school is not in session, personal expenses, health insurance, and emergency services. So again, as I had mentioned earlier, the campus designated support staff does receive training from WASAC and CSF. The goal is to have the DSS empowered to quickly make decisions to best serve those students and to be responsive to the needs of the student. The DSS is aware of the program best practices, and they're able to make support decisions for the student because they're familiar with the program criteria and oftentimes are the ones that are responsible for the Passport budget on the college campus. Okay, next slide. So you'll see here, I'm often asked about how funds are used on college campuses. And this slide just gives you a really quick glimpse into some of the ways that student support funds were used in the 1920 academic year as reported by institutions. So you can see primarily funds were used for school supplies like books and technology, emergency funding for students, especially around housing. And in this COVID environment, you know, we do need to be a little bit sensitive about that. And there is a very, very high need for housing support. Meals, groceries, gas cards, all of these things are basic needs that the student is experiencing. And thankfully, Passport is able to help support these needs. So these are some really general things that have been supported. But we also have some unique things, such as one institution contacted us to get permission to support a student with an interpreter. So the student had attended college and they were needing some additional support with language interpretation, and thankfully Passport was able to help support that student in that need. Okay, next slide. So because it's really exciting, we've had a big increase in the number of students that have been served by Passport. And at the same time, it's been a little bit of a struggle because we haven't received any additional funding for the program. So because we have a very high number of students and no additional money for the program, WASAC was required to we had to reduce the scholarship payments to students. And then we had to take another look at how student support funds would be sent to the institution and how we would be allocating those funds in a different way to kind of, you know, stretch the dollars. So we did hold aside a reserve of funds. It's about $150,000 for student support in the 2021 academic year. Now, comparatively, in the 1920 academic year, we spent over $900,000 in support funds to institutions. So that shows you how much of a cut there's been, but this funding is available. And so far, we've processed 3 awards to date, and for the student support funds, and they're for a different variety of needs, tutoring, different administrative needs, and then some additional financial assistance for students as well. So a memo was sent out to institutions on August 19th that detailed the process for requesting the additional funds from WASAC. And basically what it is that you'll go in, fill out a survey, a little questionnaire about what the funds are going to be used for, number of students that you're serving, how much money you need to be, that you need for the program. and then submit it. So finalize the survey, submit it, and then you'll send an email to the Passport inbox so that we know that that has been submitted. We're not automatically notified when the survey is completed. So if you could do that, that would be very helpful. And of course, if you have any questions, I'm happy to help. You can contact myself, or you can also contact Calvin, or you can just email the Passport inbox about any of this process, and we're happy to step in and provide you with some guidance. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand this over to Brian.
Hey everybody, this is Brian Davidson with Whatcom Community College. So I want to start off by saying that I'm not an expert on any of this. I've just been asking questions about how to use student support dollars for about 13 years, and still asking questions because, frankly, we're so used to rules. I don't know about all of you, if any of you have money to spend in other areas, going back and always checking on the exact methods or the things that we're supposed to spend money on. It can be challenging. I work also in workforce education, so there's always weird stuff about how we can spend that money. So, our business offices and everybody else, and we're always looking to try to make sure that we're checking the right boxes. But with the Passport Success dollars, I found that it's a little bit different, and it has more of a and I want to think of it a lot as more of an ethical function than something that has discrete categories for which you can use the dollars for. So when I have a need that arises with a student, one of the things I think I like to go through a process of just asking myself some questions about the nature of the need and what I can do to make it happen. And so we kind of put up this little bit of logic to kind of think a little bit about what it might like, how to work with it. So first, when a student comes with the need, asking if it's going to just support their academic and career success. If the answer is yes, which a lot of these things are, it's fairly easy to be able to justify and say that this is a good thing to be spending those support dollars on. The other part of it is asking about if it closes an equity gap between Passport scholars and maybe some of our more privileged students. One of the ways I like to think about this is that, like, when I was working on my college degree, my family didn't have a lot of money, but I still had a family there, and they were kicking me $100 a month, so I didn't have to work as much, right? And so so I had that benefit of having an attachment to a family that would be able to help me just with a little bit of cash, but with other things as well too. So I mean, thinking about it like this, are other students getting random bits of money to be able to help them survive, so they don't have to work as much? Are more privileged students getting assistance with getting tires put on the car in the wintertime so they can make it to and from school? Are they getting a thing of rent covered or a bill taken care of or whatever? And oftentimes I think that helps us to be able to recognize that no, what we're using this money for makes a lot of sense. This is what people need to be able to be successful. That's one of the reasons why more privileged students can be more successful, is because they have access to resources that are fluid, in the ways that they can be administered and what they can pay for. So if the answer is yes, that it's going to support the academic career and career success of the Passport scholar, or it is also going to help close an equity gap between Passport scholars and our more privileged students, then we should probably figure out about how to get that money to the student. And that sounds like a good plan. And so then the next set of questions is, instead of having a bunch of like rules about how to do it, we have to ask ourselves questions about like how we can do it right now. Because frankly, the needs are always changing. The way things are working inside our institutions are changing. People are changing inside those roles. And so it can be challenging to say, how do I purchase this thing? So one of the things, this is kind of how I think about it. It's like, how can I get the money where it needs to go? First of all, where's that final place it needs to go? Does it need to go directly to a student? Does it need to go directly to a vendor? Does it need to go directly to a landlord? What's the fastest way to get it there? So who does it need to go to? And then what's the quickest way to do it? And can we do it with the fewest amount of middlemen? So like, how many signatures do I need? Who has to check this off, to make sure it's legit? And if we start to identify how many steps it takes for us to do that, we may want to stop and question whether our processes or our practices can be amended in any way, because this money should be nimble. And if it's not nimble, then we probably want to have a conversation about that with our institutions. Now, sometimes the money can be super nimble. And sometimes the money can be hard to access. Right now, it may be a little harder to access than maybe when, like at my school where I'm close to my business office, I can just go in and ask them if I can use the P card because I got the rest of my paperwork taken care of. So right now, it's not as quick and not as nimble. But so how can I do it now with the least amount of middlemen? How can I do it now to get that money there the quickest? And then the last part is to try to think ahead of it about how we can minimize the impact of on the passport scholars financial aid for that given term. So it's like, is there, if it's going to go through financial aid and maybe go directly to the student, can we expand their budget in financial aid, due to computer purchases or travel or whatever other rules you may have to be able to expand the budget in financial aid? Or again, if you can pay it directly to the vendor, making it not necessarily an award in that given quarter, but something that could be a resource that would be needed to be added later to the person's FAFSA. But for right then, dealing with the emergency and the acute need, and making sure we can minimize that impact on financial aid is the other thing to do. So an example of all this might be something like this. If I had a student that right now had their computer break, okay, I would say, all right, is this going to help them with their career and academic success? Yes, absolutely. Is there an equity gap here? Sure, there is. Somebody's buying somebody a laptop when it breaks, right? So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then the question is, okay, well, how am I going to pull that off right now? What's the quickest way? The quickest way right now would be for me to purchase it online. Okay, so fine. I fill out my paperwork. I get to purchase it online. Now, the next thing is about middlemen. If I was working on campus, I'd be able to, like I say, walk into my business office, use the P card and order it online right then, have it delivered to my office and that sort of thing to be able to give to the student. But in this situation, I don't really have that luxury. So at this point in time, I'm going to probably use my relationships that I have with the people in my business office to ask them that question. Now, how am I going to be able to get it there as fast as possible? This person needs the computer quickly. Most likely, I'll be able to get them to purchase it for me by giving them all the information, and then we'll have to figure out a way for me to actually get that to the student and look into methods like, do I have to have it picked up curbside from our bookstore or from the library because of COVID, or can we do it some other way? Those would be the sort of things that I would be trying to work on to try to get it there as fast as possible. And with all of this, again, too, I would be trying to purchase it directly online. So therefore, it would not necessarily come up on the person's financial aid award for this specific quarter. And so we can avoid any problems with awards right now for them. Anyway, so that's kind of an example of how I might go through that process of figuring out how to make it work. And of course, it can be more complicated when I can't necessarily purchase it directly. Maybe the student needs some money. I may actually go through and request that the money go directly through financial aid and gets to the student quicker that way. But then, of course, that's going to impact their total cost at this point too. So weighing those things are kind of the thing that we might want to do and figure out how to use the money. So money's flexible. Money has that sort of moral imperative to it, which is great. But sometimes that flexibility means that we have to be more on our toes when it comes to the access and delivery of the need using that cash. Okay. I hope that made some sense.
Thanks, Brian. And we'll have an opportunity in a little bit to dive more into this too if folks have specific questions. All right, Dawn, handing it back to you.
Back on screen. Thank goodness I got through. So this piece, I just wanted to point out that this is actually in the Passport Program Manual. It's in section 6.4 on pages 34 and 35. And this is a question that comes up all the time. So we frequently hear about some of the challenges around student award, their need being met and their awards being maximized, and still the student needing additional support. Especially in this COVID environment where, there's a lot of challenges that the students are experiencing. And when back in the spring, we did send out a memo to institutions asking for additional flexibility and consideration in this, remote learning environment and the challenges, and taking into consideration the challenges that the students are experiencing. But this section right here that I have posted on the screen, this is actually taken from the program manual, and this has not changed in many years. So there are basically two categories to consider. Education-related expenses, where the financial aid office can go in and adjust the student's budget to accommodate the additional expenses that the student has, or a non-education related expense, where the student can still receive the additional student support funds. And then as long as the student is advised that about their responsibility in reporting the money received as other untaxed income on their FAFSA for the base year in which it was received. So you still can do it. Remember that the point of the program is to increase retention, recruitment, and degree completion for passport students. And again, I ask that you help students overcome their barriers so that they can continue their education, especially in this COVID environment, because it has been so difficult. With that, I'll hand it back to Maria and Brian.
Great, so we're going to transition into the discussion portion of the presentation for today. So on screen, we have the contact information for the presenters from today if you'd like to connect with them directly. And if you have any general questions about Passport, the Passport to Careers program, you can also reach out to the CSF team, and our email is below on the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and stop recording, and then if folks would like to, you're welcome to turn on your camera as well and unmute yourself when you have any questions for us.